I love to see the towns passing by and to ride these rails neath God's blue sky. Let me travel this land from the mountains to the sea, 'cause that's the life I believe He meant for me. And when I'm gone and at my grave you stand, say God called home your rambling man.
Welcome to Ramblin' Man Podcast, episode number 142. This one's with Thomas Zachary, and we talk about his pathway to art and his podcast, KAANP, where he interviews Knoxville and regional artists, kind of about what makes them do what they do. It was a lot of fun talking to him, and I talked way too much on this episode. Plus, we are still having a little bit of issues with our mics. I hope to order some new mics soon so we can rectify that issue. I think it's just years of wear and tear of taking these out on the road with me. And also, make sure you listen to his podcast, the KAANP, because I'll be on an upcoming episode, and they kind of work as a part one and a part two. But I appreciate Thomas for being on and all the jibbing and jabbing we did on these episodes. Make sure you give him a follow. On Instagram, it's KAANP Podcast. Just at that. And there's links there on how you can support him and follow him on other platforms. I appreciate Thomas for being on. Sponsor this week is Feral Giant. Feral Giant is a graphic design, illustration, and social media consultation company based here in Knoxville, Tennessee. So they do work for clients big and small all over the country, all over the globe, in fact. But they also do photography, videography, video editing, and audio editing, website design, SEO, writing, content development. Hell, they'll babysit your kids if it nets them money. So make sure you give them a follow on social media on either Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, or LinkedIn at Feral Giant. And be sure to give them an email today and hire them for your next project. Without much further ado, here's the episode. And I was just like, same thing. It was like, how easy is your day today?
Right, because if you're running around out in society participating amongst other people, like, is that really the time you should be getting pissed off?
Yeah.
But apparently it is.
There are bigger issues.
Yeah. Like, man, can you imagine laying around your house all day being perfectly fine and then be like, damn, I need to go to Walmart. And then while you're at Walmart, you get so pissed off for no good reason. You end up, making a scene and perhaps getting escorted out by the police.
Yeah.
Like, why?
Yeah.
You was chilling at home, just had to make a run to the grocery store, and you turned in this altercation.
What was it? The old, God, here's another one I can't talk about. Chappelle, the old Chappelle show skit, When Keeping It Real Goes Wrong.
Yeah.
I think about that all the time of just like, as a larger dude, it's just like, man, fuck around and find out is a real thing.
Yeah, it really,
it
really is. It really is. And, sometimes life just puts you in that situation where somebody's got to find out. I hate it, but sometimes you got to teach a person a thing.
You're also a larger guy, so...
Yeah, I'm 6'4", 253 pounds last time I looked. I mean,
okay.
I'm not small.
Okay. I was telling a guy today, he was asking me, he was like, you have... What was it he said? You have... he didn't say security, but he said something like that. The ability to go out and not be worried about yourself. Yeah. I was like... Here's a misconception that I've learned in the years that I've lived in this giant body. 45% of dudes are terrified of me. 45% of dudes want to fight me to prove they're a man. Mm-hmm. And then 10% don't give a shit.
I'd say that's about right, yeah.
And I said, I have been in situations with that 45% that needs to prove they're a man where I've had a hard time not turning around going, I need you to check your boy. because otherwise I'm going to pick his drunk ass up and throw him in the road.
Right, yeah.
I'm sober. And he's clutching that beer bottle like he's about to try and hit me with it. And I need him to stop right now.
Right, yeah.
Because I'm just trying to go in my car. I'm just trying to live my life.
You just tell people, like, I don't like his body language.
Yeah.
So, y'all.
Y'all figure this shit out.
Man, it's funny. Like, I've really, been out in public and innocently doing nothing, just in public, and then people start shit. And sometimes you just have to be that guy.
Yeah.
Because you're all of a sudden the target and you just have to deal with it. And it sucks, but it happens to everybody because you're in public.
Yeah. Well, but
just in some way or another. Like, you get singled out for some bullshit somehow.
Well, but it's also like all of my dad and uncles are big dudes too. And I think they kind of raised me of like, oh, if you see anybody bullying somebody, just step in and stop it.
Yeah.
And especially it was very much so like, you don't hit women, you don't hit children.
Yeah.
Like, you don't hit women, you don't hit children. And I was at a UT football game, and this drunk ass dude was just trying to pick a fight with anybody. And he just stood in the way and you know how I look by just that sound. And and he kept bumping people and all this shit. And then some dude came up and said, hey man, you need to stop that. And he pushed that dude up against a wall and started, and I went, nope. And I grabbed the dude and I threw him. And then he stood up and he pushed me in the chest.
And you didn't move, right? He moved?
I didn't move. He was like, I ain't scared of you. Push back. And I leaned in, and I can't believe I was this quick. It rarely happens. I said, you should. I leaned in and I said, you should be.
Yeah.
And he was just, at that point, the ushers grabbed him
and
took off. And he still tried to start.
Of course he did.
And he tried to come back and start punching them. And I was like, if you want to go, dude, let's go. And that's the point where he flipped me off and walked out.
And beer sales in Neyland Stadium is strong and renewed. Apparently, they were able to get over their grievances. Last week.
Oh, did this happen?
Yeah,
I missed this.
Airmark and the university met and they hashed it out.
Oh.
They said, "Hey guys, money," and then the other guys said, "Hey guys, money," and they both said, "Yes."
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
They rubbed their hands together and said yes quietly under their breath.
Oh my god. Where are you originally from?
Okay, so not Knoxville, but have been in and around Knoxville my whole life. I'm from a tiny place called Sneedville in Hancock County.
Okay.
It's about 90-ish miles northeast of Knoxville. And it's about as Appalachian small town, 2 stoplights as it gets. Now, there are smaller places, but that list is equally small. I was raised pretty conservative and all that jazz, being in East Tennessee and whatnot, Bible Belt. Yeah. Moved to Knoxville for some schooling when I was 21, just before I turned 21, and did that and have been here ever since.
What did your folks do for a living?
My dad did all kinds of stuff. He had a lot of jobs, but, always put food on the table. He's a good dad. He worked at a plate glass manufacturing place in Churchill for a while. He drives truck now. He's been doing that for a good bit.
That's what my dad did for 40-something years, drove a truck.
He says it's easy work. It's just long hours. So, whatever.
Yeah.
But he's happy doing it, so that's what I like to see. My mom was a career school teacher. So, awesome. Being in school in a small town, she had me in class and all the wonderful intricacies that makes.
Have you ever heard the comedian Billy Wayne Davis?
No.
Okay. He's from Cookeville, or just outside of Cookeville. And I was in Atlanta to see him. That's why I was in Atlanta, to see my friend and see him.
Nice.
And his mom, I think he said his mom was a school teacher, but his dad was, he was like a coach and a air quotes teacher.
All right. So I got, not trying to one up the man, but my family was really heavy into the education infrastructure of Hancock County. My grandfather was my principal from 6th grade till my junior year in high school. So that was interesting and had its own small list of perks. My great aunt was also my 6th grade science teacher. One of my grandmothers was a history teacher in a different grade after I left school. So I knew I was related to a lot of people. Oh my God. I couldn't get in trouble because if I got in trouble in my mom's class, my papa found out about it, and my dad found out about it, and my aunt found out about it because her classroom was directly across the hall. So she'd see me sitting out in the hallway in timeout or whatever, and like wag her finger at me from the window in the door, and vice versa for my mom. So then my grandfather would find out either way, and then when I got home, mom and dad would talk and be like, "This boy got in trouble today," and then the whole family was on my ass.
See, okay, so
I couldn't get in trouble. I could not.
I had I don't want to say opposite. So everybody in my family went to Fulton. Everybody. Like my grandmother even got her GED at Fulton.
Whoa, there you go.
Like grandmother got GED, my mom and dad, my dad's brothers, my mom's brothers, everybody went to Fulton. So they knew everybody there and the coaches and everything.
Yep. Oh, my uncle was baseball coach for a little while. Yep.
So
forgot about that.
Freshman year, I'd already been playing football because we have football practice before school started. And I walk in, and all the coaches used to line up on that third floor, and we'd walk in, and there would be all the coaches. And my Uncle Dale, who's in Michigan, who's a teacher, the one that's a teacher, and he came down, and he walked in school because he was going to see some of his old teachers. And I walked by, and all the coaches were like, Jody. And my uncle stopped him and was like, "What'd you call him?" And they're like, "Jody." He's like, "Nah, that's my nephew Judy. They call me Judy for 4 years.
Oh.
Hell, I've seen him at the gas station. They still call me Judy." Like, I'm like, so I couldn't not get in trouble. I got picked on.
Well, now that's not to say my unique position in this little sphere of society kept me from ridicule amongst my peers. No, not at all. I wasn't the most popular kid in school, but whatever. I had good friends and did okay, so whatever. My grades and my social life weren't terrible. But, it's high schools and middle school, so everybody gets picked on.
So all of my cousins are at least 10 years younger than me. So I was the only kid for 10 years.
I'm in a middle sandwich in the tier of my family. Like,
okay.
I've got a few people older than me, and it's like me and some of my cousins, and
See,
then the rest of my family.
Sneak.
No.
The
the rest of my cousins are all like 22 to 7,
okay.
and there's like 28 of them.
Holy crap!
I got a big family on my dad's side.
Okay. Well, I was the only kid for 10 years, so I was either doted on by my grandmother
because you were the youngest.
Because I was the kid, but they treated me like a little brother. So they were ruthless.
Oh, of course.
They were absolutely ruthless.
Yeah.
And then, because of that, that's how, when I meet people now, I am so unflinchingly picking on them. I was like, that's my love language.
It's like, oh, I'm sorry. You caught the sarcasm in the way I didn't intend it.
Yeah. I was like, oh, sorry. I didn't mean to. I've been talking to somebody and had somebody else get mad on that person's behalf because I'm just laying into it.
So since we're here,
yeah.
What's the language criteria on this particular
program? You can say whatever you want.
All the words?
Well, there are certain words I might kick your ass for. Certain slurs.
Well, none of those words.
Yeah.
But just the general profanities.
Oh yeah, you can say F. I don't think anybody's ever dropped the C bomb on here.
Oh, can I?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, that's such a privilege.
Wait, no. I take that back. I have.
Okay.
And here's the only reason why. It's because my parents, also because I was the lone kid, they would let me watch all this crazy stuff when I was growing up. Now, couldn't have nudity. It could be abhorrent violence.
But no
and
titties.
Cursing. So
no
I remember clearly watching a Robin Williams special when I was in I was 6.
Oh, and
he
one of
he
his
said
80s specials he's talking about. Oh god!
And he dropped a C bomb, and I turned around to my mom and I went, "Hey, Mom, what's a?" She's like, "No, you do not say that word."
So was there further monitoring of your TV? Oh,
hell no!
Wonderful.
But anytime boobs came up on screen, it's like turn your head. Even we were watching Dragnet with Tom Hanks and why am I blanking on his name? Ghostbuster, Dan Aykroyd. And there was a woman in a strip club with pasties. And even that, they were like, turn your head.
Oh, my goodness.
But my dad at 11 sat me down and watched Deliverance. He's like, oh, this is a great one. Watch this. At 11.
That's oh, God. Yeah, I mean, to be fair, Deliverance was a common bit of media in my home.
So, here, you're up there. So here, I'll share this story with you. So when I was young, all my Dad's brothers and uncles. You know what I mean by that. Uncles.
Just all the people that were family, but not really family.
Yeah. They all served in the worst shit of Vietnam. Just the roughest, like, the stories they finally started telling when I was in high school. It took them that long. Were so just like...
So there's some characters.
We walked out of Quincy's on Broadway, and my dad was just like, that's the first time they've ever talked about that shit. Because so Dad has two brothers. They were over they all volunteered. They didn't get drafted. They just said, nope, they're going to take us because we're poor. So we're just going to go ahead and go.
Yeah, that's exactly why they take a lot of people.
Yeah. And so, but my dad, for whatever reason, lingered a little bit. He had joined, but he just didn't get deployed. And my grandmother... 5 foot, 97 pound East Kentucky woman who beat tuberculosis when she was a kid, like tough as nails. Granny. She went to her pastor and said, they've got 2 of my boys. They're not taking my 3rd boy.
Right.
And started writing to John Duncan Sr. and got my dad deferred to where he was a chaplain's assistant in Korea. So every day I think about how lucky I am because if he'd gone to Vietnam, I may not be
here.
Yeah. But they would tell those stories. Hell, now I can't remember where so I've also played poker with my dad and uncle since I was 8 years old. And all the stories would end with Dad going, don't tell your mama. Like,
right, yeah.
Just the crazy. But there was one where one of the uncles, the oldest brother, he had went to Jellicoe and went camping right after he got out of Vietnam. And he had just set up, he had cracked open a beer, had a fire, and I was 10 or 11 when I heard this story. These 2 guys came out of the woods. They sat down. He gave them a beer, but they were just being squirrely. And he said they left, and they were like, we'll be back. And he packed up his shit and got out of there.
Yeah, that's fair.
That's the story I heard when I was 10 or 11. Cut to I'm 18 or 19, and I'm riding with my Uncle Doc, the youngest brother.
It's like, hey, you remember that time?
He said, I said something about that when we passed through Jellicoe. He's like, oh. Nah, we didn't tell you the whole story. I was like, oh, God, what was the whole story?
There's more.
And he was like, oh, it wasn't just your Uncle Tom. Oh, my God, I can't believe I'm telling these this early on a podcast. I've actually said I need to record an episode just of all the stories I've heard and never release it until after I'm dead.
Oh, well, yeah, go ahead.
Statute of limitations. It's been a long time. The true story was it was actually... the uncle went, but there were 2 or 3 other uncles with him. And he said the 2 guys actually came out of the woods holding shotguns and that those uncles beat the ever-loving shit out of those 2 rednecks because those rednecks didn't realize they were coming upon 4 Vietnam vets.
Right, and you can't just sneak up on a man like that.
And you're talking like 6'3", 6'2", the runt was 6'1".
So...
And they packed up their shit and they left. And so I looked at
after they delivered an ass whooping.
Yeah. And my uncle, and I was like, were they dead? And my uncle was literally like, I'm not 100% sure. I was like, oh my God. And I'm hearing this story and I was like, and I just look at him, I paused for a second. I was like, so Deliverance was a documentary.
Yeah.
Because I was like, holy, I figured you'd like that.
That happens.
Like, yeah.
That happens.
Yeah. It was
Shit gets
crazy.
wild.
I was like, yeah, but I didn't get the whole story until like.
My dad liked to do this thing with the movie Deliverance where like some of my family would come over and we'd all be hanging out, having dinner, whatever. And like somebody's got their new significant other.
Oh God.
And Dad would turn that on in the living room after everybody got done eating. Yeah. You know, it's a long ass movie anyway.
Yeah.
And it's a long movie. Parts of it are very polarizing. I think my dad did this to traumatize new significant others.
Oh, of course.
And it took me a long time to figure out that this was the play because I was just like, damn, why do you always watch this movie when people are here? Like, you don't ever watch it any other time. And honestly, he doesn't consume a lot of movies in his free time anyway, but he'll sit and watch Deliverance with a room full of people for no excuse at all.
That's amazing. It still has my favorite line maybe in any movie.
I've seen him do it at least 6 times.
What is it the guy says? He's like, the Coolawasi ain't nothing but the biggest fucking river in the state. Yeah. Every time I think about that, every time. I don't know, every once in a while that'll pop into my head. Okay, so you're out there. How many brothers and sisters do you have?
I've got some estranged siblings, and me and my younger sister are really close.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So two of those, and one I still talk to.
Okay. Oh, dude, my I don't know if this is a Southern thing or what. My great grandfather. The only way I can remember this is the oldest was 100 and the youngest was 454, something like that. There was like 46 years difference between his oldest kid and his youngest kid. And he had like 5 to 7 wives.
Okay, that makes more sense.
And had kids from every single. So, and one of the wives.
How big was his farm?
No. He moved around because my grandfather moved from like Sharps Chapel to, I know he lived in Sharps Chapel and I know he lived in Bearden when it was still all farmland.
Yeah.
Back in the 20s and 30s.
The civil engineering of Knoxville from Civil War to now has been a lot of, I'm going to say it, fuck shit.
Yeah.
And some of it is brilliant, but I promise you that's like 4%.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, you can just drive down Kingston Pike and it is.
Yeah, that's the same route some soldiers marched back in the day.
Yeah.
I think we can do better than that in 20-something.
But yeah, so, and it was funny because one of the wives, I think it was the wife right after my grandfather, she was Melungeon. She was 100% Melungeon. And so all those kids had olive skin, big flat nose, like they were Melungeon kids. And it was just like, man, this is crazy. And then as I've gotten older, I've realized, wait, there are some kids in that group that are the same age as my grandfather. Huh. That's interesting. Weird how that works out.
Yeah, man. Yeah, my family's big. Vardy and Blackwater and a lot of the storied Melungeon territory is actually like just across the ridge from Sneedville. Yeah. And that's a pretty serious cultural point in Hancock County. It's kind of cool. I enjoy that.
So we'll say my dad's a truck driver, and he drove. Sneedville is a term I heard a lot when I was a kid.
If you drive a big rig through Sneedville is the easiest part. To and from is torture.
Yeah.
I never want to do that.
He was always up in that area or Tri-County, all of that. He was always in that range.
Dude, 33, 31, 70, 66. I don't want to drive a truck across any of those.
Yeah.
No. Hell no.
Oh, I went to Asheville one time. I was like, I want to drive the Blue Ridge Parkway as long as I can. So I hopped on.
Yeah.
I got up the hill, and all of a sudden I turned a corner, and there was an 18-wheeler on the Blue Ridge Parkway. And I was like, and he was trying to make a curve. I was like, whoa.
Yeah. You gotta give him all the room to be stupid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like you're about to win a Darwin Award and go over the side of a mountain, man.
Well, it's like if you ever drive on the Dragon or see any of the pictures from the Dragon, sometimes you'll see a semi on the Dragon. You're like, I don't know why you did this, sir. You're endangering the lives of multiple people right now.
So during the middle of the pandemic, I was like, I have to get the hell out of my house. I found a very cheap cabin in North Carolina. I was like, I'm going to go there because I got it for like 4 or 5 days for like $30 or $40 a night.
Oh, hell yeah.
And I was like, I got to get the hell out of my house. So I'm going there, and I turned, and I was like, Dragon. Shit. I had to drive the Dragon to get there and get back. I was like, damn it. I didn't want to do this, man.
Well, that's luckily in this day and age, that's a luxury because that's a fairly fun road. I don't know what you were driving, but I
drove a little Toyota Yaris, so I was taking some of those corners pretty damn quick.
There you go. Yeah. The last time I was on the Dragon, I was in a 91 Honda Activan, and I was sitting in the back in the middle.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, I mean, I weigh like 1/10 of that vehicle's gross weight.
Yeah.
So I figured I could do it some favors and lean into the corners from the middle of the car. It did just fine.
There were times when I turned corners, and I would see the people with the cameras lift their cameras up. And I would have my hand out the window and go. I would just do that, like don't take pictures of me.
They take pictures of everybody.
I know.
I know some of those guys. They're talented folks.
Some of those photos I've seen are unreal. But I was just like, I don't need a picture of my busted ass '08 Yaris. Were you always into art?
I can't. Okay, so. Yes, active, purposefully, no. But I always had a pencil or art supplies or crayons. I wasn't devoid of the tools ever.
Okay.
But it's not like I practiced or put on or, did any like active practicing or furthering of a craft.
Were there art classes in the high school?
Well, high school, no, but elementary school, yeah.
Okay.
Which kind of sucked. We had a theater class, and there was some art stuff. Well, yeah, I guess technically we did have an art class, but it wasn't. It was more of a theater class.
Okay.
Because the same teacher taught both, and the curriculum all played together, which was fine for me because creativity as a whole is one fluid mass of some BS. So it's fine.
Were comics or cartoons a big thing for you?
I drew a lot of really simple comics when I was in like freshman, sophomore year. But I wasn't an avid comic reader, but I would read on occasion when I would borrow stuff from friends. And I had some pretty generous friends at times, so
okay.
I got to read a lot of comic books. It's just I didn't go out and buy and lust after comic books, but I read what I could get my hands on.
My dad, when he was in the service, they would send them comics. So I have like late 60s, early 70s Spider-Man, all kinds of stuff. That's what I grew up reading. So those comics are beat to shit.
Right.
For me, one of my buddies is like, you got to get that graded. I was like, it would be like a 3.
Yeah, nobody wants to even grade this.
No. So I've got all his. And then I hit middle school just as that comic boom was happening. And comic stores started picking up. So I got to collect back then. And I've had fits and spurts.
Well, I had a lot of access to VHS rental stores more than comic book shops when I was growing up because there were a few of those. No comic book shops in Sneeville, but there were a few rental video places.
Okay.
So I burnt up a couple different episodes of Thundercats.
Okay.
Oh, man. I don't know how many times I made my mom rent this one episode of Thundercats. Damn, maybe 60 or 70 times, but it was over a long period of time, and don't rent movies every night, so whatever. Back then.
Oh no, my parents would rent. They would get off work, and we would go to a rental store right over here in the old Kmart shopping center, and some independent place. So whenever I see people talking about, oh man, I miss Blockbuster, I was like, I didn't know Blockbuster until I was in like high school or college.
Dude, I never saw I didn't see a Blockbuster until I was in my mid-teens.
Yeah.
No, it was always that place down down on the corner or whatever.
With the beads that went back to the special room.
There was none of that.
There was none of that.
No. The other VHS rental place also doubled as the city beer store. That particular establishment played played. I don't see it so much no more, but that's a big part of my life. I spent a lot of time in that room growing up for reasons that weren't totally in my control.
Okay.
But it ended up, sometimes I'd win money off old drunk guys playing darts. So it wasn't all bad.
That's how you paid for renting that Thundercats.
Well, no, that was when I was much younger. This was more when I had to, make sure my dad got home safely from the dump because the beer store was on the way back from the dump.
Okay.
So, I was a DD every now and again.
Oh my God. Okay, well, you win because I've told stories about. So I grew up pretty poor, but my family had a lot of friends, and they would. A big group of like 20 families would go in to get together, and we would be able to rent like an entire floor of a Myrtle Beach hotel.
Oh, hell yeah.
Because it was always super cheap when you did like
the
massive groups.
Right.
And so we would go to Myrtle Beach, and my dad and uncles, because I was the only kid, I would go bar hopping with them.
So my mom, this is a good one. I like this. I fondly look back on this shenanigan right here. My mom had some friends back in the day that she went to college with, super close through life, and they had a condo in Panama City Beach, and I went down there for spring break when I was like 13, and my sister, she was 10 at the time. We were down there with my mom, and so I just went off with her friend's husband Joe and one of his buddies, and we'd go fish on the pier all day. And I'd watch them drink beer, and we'd all fish and just do, old man bullshit on the pier. And then we'd come back to the place that they were remodeling. The other dude flipped houses, so we were in a spot that he owned and was flipping.
Oh, okay.
And that's when I saw grown-ass men take tequila shots with lime and salt for the first time. I was like 13. We were just watching History Channel, and they were in the kitchen just like throwing back shots.
No, mine was. I don't know what the hell they were drinking. I would drink Virgin Pina Coladas and Shirley Temples. And I think it was the Shirley, both of those came with the little swords.
Yeah.
With the cherries.
Yeah.
And I would collect those. I had hundreds of those swords. But the one that I always remember is I was like 5 or 6. And I grew up on the east side of town. So I grew
5
up.
or 6?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I grew up being the only white kid in the room a lot, which was great. Like, that's just how I grew up. So we're sitting at a bar, and I'm sitting there drinking my little Shirley Temple, and there's a guy sitting beside me talking to my dad. And I could tell he was in the Navy because he had, back then you didn't, this is early 80s, you didn't have a tattoo unless you were a biker or in the Navy. And he had the tattoo right there, and he's facing away from me looking at my dad, and they're talking, and he just keeps dropping the N-bomb. And my dad finally leans over, looks at me, looks at him, and the finger came up. When my dad's finger came up, it's like shit's about to break off. And he put his finger in his face. He's like, you say that word. He's like, my son is friends with a lot of black kids back home. You say that word one more time, he's going to get off that bar stool, kick your ass, and I'm going to let it happen. And the guy just looked at me.
Looked over at you.
And then looked at my dad, and then just picked up his beer and got the hell out of there.
That's a good call on that guy's behalf.
But yeah, my dad, oh God, he was about ready to beat
He put you on the spot, though. That's kind of rude.
Yeah, I was joking. I was like, what are we doing, Dad?
Yeah, right.
It's like 5 or 6. I was still like 6'1". No, I'm just kidding.
My dad took me into a bar one time that I shan't name on record, and I didn't drink or anything, so it's not like, the only thing bad about this scenario is I was underage and I was in there. Yeah. I was like, I think I was 16, and I just got my driver's license. Whatever. We'd been out on the lake all day. I had to drive the boat in from the lake because the water cops were like, "Hey, who's driving this boat?" And they all pointed at me. So I was like, "Well, I've never driven a boat before, so here I go." Anyway, we went to this bar, and my dad and his buddies bellied up and got their beers, and I just kind of followed them in there because, I didn't really know how bars work at the time. And I ordered me a glass of water, and this lady comes up to me and was like, "How old are you?" And I said, and she said 22 tomorrow, and like ran her hand up the back of my scalp. God. And I was like, "Yes, ma'am." And she sat there and we talked for the next like 4 hours while my dad and his friend drank. And she was a lovely lady, and she made sure nobody messed with me all night. And I'm very appreciative of her. She shepherded me through a very, very awkward situation with a lot of ease and understanding.
Somebody's meemaw.
I don't care. It could have been somebody's meemaw, but she was a dime piece to me that night. She took me under her wing and was like, "I got you. Nobody's gonna mess with you." Like pretty much put me in a good spot where if they saw me talking to her, nobody's gonna mess with me. So.
Well, not equal to that, but finally, like there was
I don't know if my dad would remember that either.
Oh. Oh God, I've told my mom and dad stories, and they're like, "That didn't happen." I was like, "Oh yeah, it did. Oh yeah, it did. I got a better memory than you two."
Yeah,
that happened.
I was younger.
Yeah,
I saw y'all do things.
my mom. It was my little sister's birthday. This has just been the last 2 or 3 years, and I'm sitting there, and my mom is telling some story because I'm not married, don't have any kids, and never been married. And there was a point when I was like 28 where I was at my parents' house. I was laying on the couch or love seat. My dad's sitting there, my mom's sitting over there, smoking Virginia Slims, drinking Mellow Yellow.
Oh, God.
Woo! That gives you a taste in your mouth, doesn't it? And
yeah, I love Mellow Yellow, but I hate cigarettes.
Yeah. So she's doing that, and my dad's just like laying it on thick. He's like, "Yeah, you got so easy. You got no woman telling you what to do." And I was like, "Yeah, it's great. I can
Has
do
your
it."
mom said a word this entire time?
No, she's just sitting there looking at the TV, smoking the cigarettes, reading the menu.
Telling you what to do, and she's just over quiet.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Because shit's about to pop off.
Yeah.
And we go through this about 3 minutes, and we're just smiling ear to ear because we're like getting.
Y'all are stirring the pot.
Yeah. We're getting away with him. Finally, my mom, without looking at us, goes, "Laugh it up. Your ass turns 30. It's mine." I was like, "Oh God, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. What did I do? Oh God, no." So the day I turned 30, I got an alert from Match.com. She had signed me up for Match. I started getting coupons for formula and diapers. And it just bombarded
Oh,
with
man.
everything at
You know
8.
what? I'm gonna step out on a limb here and say that's rude as hell. Now I understand the sentiment, but
No, that's my family. Oh, no. If you mess with me, I'm going to get you.
well, I mean, I understand it in context because that's just the funny way to go about things.
Yeah.
But that, I don't know if I would do that to anybody I care about.
My mom is it's so funny. She's the sweetest, most cutting person.
I was about to say that's really ruthless and like.
Oh,
that's,
there was one point. So
this is why I don't let my mom have my email addresses.
Oh, yeah. She was using, because this was back in AOL, so she was using my email address to log on to the internet sometimes. Or my accounts.
All right, fair enough.
So I'm going to knock on wood, but she had breast cancer. I love telling this story because it's fucking hilarious, which is a weird setup for she had breast cancer.
Yeah, it is, but I'm here for it. Let's go.
So I would take her to her chemo treatments. I would drive her to her chemo treatments, and if there's room, I would always sit in the back with her during a chemo treatment. And as we were taking, every time I was taking her home, and she'd say, "Honey, I need a milkshake," and I'll get you one too. And so we would get milkshakes, and I would drive her home. And
Solid.
then she got to the point to where she started losing her hair. Oh, God, I forgot. There's so much brutality in the story. But I love my mom.
I
understand
the context because my mother also had breast cancer. But I was like 13, so it was a whole different like mortality smack in the face.
Yeah. But I was going to say, I was probably closer to 30 when this happened.
Oh, no. I was like 12. 12 to 15 was when that was really kicking in my life.
But she started losing her hair, and it was falling into her food. It was, when she would sleep, it would get in her mouth.
Right.
And she called me and she's like, "Hey, honey, I need you to bring your clippers over here. I'm starting to lose my hair, and you have so much experience with being bald."
You're the guy to call, right?
You're like, the dude. I need you to come over here. I was like, first of all, ow. Second of all, okay. So I go over there, and I was like, "Do you want me to do it with?" I was showing her like the guards, or do you want me to shave it all the way? She's like, "Shave it all the way."
Just cut it all off, yeah.
So I shaved. And I got about halfway through, and she picked up the mirror, and she's like, "Oh, God, I didn't mean that much." And then she paused for a second. She's like, "I still look pretty. Keep going."
Yeah, there you go.
And I just kept shaving, and she looked at the end. She was like, "Honey, you did a good job." I was like, "Thanks, Mom." And she was like, she didn't say anything for a second. I was like, "All right, I'm going to leave." And she's like, "Why?" And I was like, "Because Dad will be here any minute.
Right, yeah.
I need to get the hell out of here."
Yeah.
He doesn't know this is happening.
Yeah, exactly.
And, but so on her last chemo treatment, my little sister is 11 and a half years younger than me. So my little sister, who was 17 or 18 at the time, took her, I guess about 18 or 19, really, took her to the last chemo treatment. And when they left, she said, "Honey, we're going, take us to Chili's." So they went to Chili's to East Town Mall, and my mom got in there, and the waitress came up and she said, "Now, honey, here's what's going to happen. I just had my last chemo treatment. This is my daughter. I need you to bring us 2 margaritas to celebrate me having my last chemo treatment. She is under 21. I don't care. You're going to bring us 2 margaritas."
And that's what happened, right?
And that's what fucking happened. Now, later on, I thought, I was like, well, they probably made my sister's, no alcohol or whatever, but maybe not. Like,
right.
But my sister told later, said that waitress looked terrified. Just like, oh, shit.
I mean, how could you say no to that?
No, she wasn't like terrified about serving an underage person. She was terrified that my mom was just so directive, just like, this is what's going to happen.
Well, I mean, why? Like, someone comes at you level serious and tells you that. Why? How could you say no?
No. And so this is like 6 months, a year later. I'm sitting talking to my mom, and there's this person I know who started this major that got breast cancer, a younger person, but she started this major PR campaign about how she was going to beat breast cancer and yada. She was going to blog. She got on all the news stations, all this, and I'm just sitting there like, man, my mom just quietly fought. And this, I was like, needs the spotlight. So I go over to my mom, and I'm just like, I was like, "Mom, I need you to tell me if I'm being a jerk or not. Because I can't cuss in front of my parents. I will not do it." And which is hilarious.
Ooh, I can't say that.
Yeah. "I need you to tell me if I'm being a jerk or not." And she's like, "Okay, what is it, honey?" And I tell her, I was like, "And it bothers me because you just dealt with it. And I'm watching this person, and they feel like me. And she listened to me speaking. At the end, she was like, "Are you done?" I was like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Okay, honey, you are an asshole." And she was like, "Whatever it takes for that person to get through it." Oh, the other thing was that person ended up like a month in, not going through any treatments, got both her boobs cut off and got fake boobs put on.
Oh, so she
made this big push. And
Yeah.
I always forget that part because it's like, oh, that's shitty.
man.
So, and my mom's like, whatever it takes for somebody to go through it, you have no right to say anything to them. And she sat there for a second because of course she did. She was like, who is it? And I told her the name. And I said, oh, it's blah, blah. And she goes, oh, fuck her. And I was like, man, my mom is the sweetest, most cutting person in the world.
That's hilarious.
She takes no shit, man.
As one shouldn't.
No.
Oh, that's a damn fine story. I like that one. I like that one.
Okay, so do you remember the first piece of art or artist that made you kind of take notice?
Arts. The first time I arted, I like asking people that question in that way. The first time you arted, because it almost sounds like a fart joke. But yeah, I remember a lot of early pieces that I did.
Oh no, I mean something you saw that made it click in your brain.
So I grew up around cars, and my grandfather, that was the principal, who had multiple businesses in Sneeville at different points in life. He had a used car lot / service center. So I grew up in a garage a lot, and I saw all kinds of cars. Not that I saw anything particularly extreme, but I saw a lot of cars, and I was exposed to a lot of automotive things. So I've always been inspired by automotive stuff, and I saw, race cars and show cars and lowriders and all the stuff. Like I used, my family's big into cars, so we go to car shows. We've done all kinds of automotive things.
Okay.
And it's just something I was always easily, it's an arena of creativity I've always been close to. So, looking at that, and then that, like the flip side of that, the mechanical side of it, I'm in both of those arenas from a very young age, which has been always entertaining. But bright colors and fancy psychedelic things were really what got me. Like lowriders back, Southern California lowrider culture, the flake and the striping and all the vivid colors and patterns that really set me off. And then like classic hot rod pinstriping stuff with the geometry and symmetry really, really entertained me, which are still things that influence my artistic practice to this day.
It's wild. I've got there for a while. I was on TikTok, and I was on some algorithm where I was seeing the guys do the pinstripes.
Yeah, the coach lines. Yeah,
and it was like, this is insane.
And that's really how that happens too. And there are people that do both sides of that particular thing, but generally those folks do just that, and they go around the car lots, and they can make a hefty sum of money just running around striping a dozen cars at a nice car lot sometimes. But I tend to gravitate towards more of the fantastical things.
Okay.
Yeah. Either way, it's very artistic and creative and takes dedication, so I'm not trying to slide it, but that art is different from the things I enjoy. I've always enjoyed the really crazy, colorful, intricate pinstriping that you would see on, custom things from like the 50s, 60s, 70s. And that really comes through in my artwork when I'm working on this kind of style I'm doing right now.
Okay, so more to your question, do you remember the first piece that you did that you were kind of proud of, or that you didn't hide?
That I didn't hide. My older brother was kind of artistic too, and he would draw some stuff, and I would try to emulate it. I can't remember anything specific, but I know I did that a lot.
Okay.
I used to do some still life stuff because that's what was around me. I'd sit out on the back porch and draw whatever was going on in the backyard, just the scenery, animals, cows, horses, stuff like that. I lived in a pretty rural spot, so there in my neighborhood, as with the rest of the county, there are more cows than people, so I can look out pretty much any window in my house and see cows. So I drew a lot of that, and it was nice, but I got into and cars were also part of all that mess. I got into middle school and got angsty and started drawing stuff that I thought would piss people off, and then that and that was more counterculture stuff, flames and skulls, and still kind of automotive influence, but just like polarizing things. And
did you? So when you got out of high school, did you go to art school? Like, what is your degree in?
My degree is in 3D design and visual communication.
Okay.
But that is, I do both of those things personally and for a living. So I'm not totally outside of my field, I guess. Okay. But all the 3D stuff is, for me, I don't do it professionally. It's part of my workflow as a creative person to make art.
Okay.
But the visual communication stuff, I work in the signage and advertisement industry. I'm a large format print media specialist kind of thing. I work with 54 and 60-inch printers and plotters and vinyl. And
is it somewhere you can mention, or?
My employer is AZ Rags IPS.
Okay, I don't know that.
We do large format signage and vehicle wraps and all that kind of thing. So if you have ideas, we can probably make it happen for you. We do it all in house.
So I've been in printing forever, and I know High Res, I know Parrot. I'm trying to think. Allen Sons.
I'll say there's a lot of good choices to get print work done around town.
Yeah, and
I'll leave it at that.
Well, and it's wild because when I was coming up, like actual printing, like offset lithography, there was 25, 30 shops, and now there's probably less than. There's probably 5 or less.
Yeah.
At this point, it's kind of wild.
Yeah. Well, that particular technology has fallen out of favor.
Yeah.
But it's still wonderful. I enjoy it. I work with every day I print on a 60-inch HP 560 latex machine, and okay. I like it. I like it a lot.
I'll have to ask. There's a buddy of mine that he's working for one of the alcohol distributors in town, and he has a large format that he has to print off all and mock up.
Yeah,
not mock up, but actually build like POP and stuff all the time. My biggest issue with the large format, anytime I had access to one, were hickeys. Anytime you would have that big swath of color, and you would see one little hickey, it's like, son of a bitch, man.
Well, the solvent machines generally, in my experience, head strike more than the latex machines. So but I have a very limited working scope with. Okay. I have experience on these 2 machines, and that's it. So so I can't say I've worked with a very veritable cornucopia of printing devices, but But on the flip side of that, personally, I have 3D printers at home, and I do 3D modeling and all that jazz for my creative pursuits. I make jewelry, I make stamps, tools, stencils, whatever I can make that I need. As much as I can do in-house, I try to do in-house for my creative practice. Okay. Just because I can.
Do you still do stuff? I don't want to say by hand, but
I mean, I design everything on the computer with my 2 hands. It's not like I'm crafting something physical with subtractive processes and then laser scanning it into the computer so it can then be printed, which I could. Right. And I've laser scanned my face and printed my face for a piece of art I did recently, which I'm really proud of. But that's I generally just build things on the computer or in VR and then print them if it's a custom piece of something that I want to design.
Okay. There's a friend of mine that he got into plants and got a 3D printer at the same time, so he's been doing nothing but printing.
Oh, planters and vases and hooks. Dude,
but he's making them out of like Terminator heads and stuff like that.
It's ridiculous. You can, if one half of the Venn diagram is 3D printing and the other half is literally whatever the fuck you want it to be. Yeah. The circles overlap like 85%.
And it's also wild, like the things that I think are unique or niche or not many other people know of. I just Googled. There was this movie in the 80s that was one of my favorite films called Batteries Not Included. And I Googled it because I was like, is there any art or anything? Because if there's not, I would like to create some Batteries Not Included. Mm-hmm. And Etsy's first thing came up. 3D printed models of the 2 main aliens from Battery. I was like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, there are a lot of really neat 3D printed shenanigans on Etsy. I used to sell 3D printed things on Etsy. All right, so things that I used to sell on Etsy that were 3D printed. I used to make script text wall art Okay. And it had a channel in it that I filled with glow resin. And that way you could see the word at night and it would be glowing whatever color of your choice. But instead of live, laugh, love, I had fuck, shit, and cunt.
You beat me to it because I was going like, I assume live, laugh, love.
Well.
Oh, God, that's amazing.
So fuck was my handwriting.
Yeah.
Shit was my mother's handwriting.
Lovely.
She's so glorious. She handled this request with such grace. I said, hey, Mom, I need you to write the word shit in cursive and then send me a picture. She didn't ask why. She just said, give me a minute. And then like 3 hours later.
Oh, my God.
And then cunt was a custom font I did with like a felt tip marker.
Okay. Man, see, I kind of would love to have one, but it wouldn't be handwriting. I want it to be bold where it said, I don't know if you know the song, alcohol, pussy, and weed.
Yes.
From 8-Ball and MJ.
Yes.
Just like word, period, word, period, word,
well,
period.
I had two different cunt designs. One was a very large, bold font, and the other one was just, the writing with the felt tip pen.
That's amazing.
But I've gotten away, even though they were wonderful and I loved making them, I got away from using resin because it's not great for the environment. And, And it's really messy.
Is resin, I think resin is the one that I sent to my buddy that I found, same thing, TikTok. I'm on TikTok too damn much. And it was somebody took the leftover stuff and would make art out of the leftover stuff.
Yeah, as one should probably, because it's just very material intensive outside of the resin itself. Like you gotta have syringe. Well, I use syringes and silicone measuring cups and a scale, and then storage of everything. It's always dirty. So it's just not the most conducive to how I like to do my stuff at home, DIY style. But I really enjoy using it. It's just the context of it is a lot.
Right. Are there things in doing that have made you push to do something you're uncomfortable with?
Oh man, I'm always trying to do stuff, especially digitally, because I'm not going to sit here and say I could paint whatever I'm looking at and it'd be perfectly, I'm not as good. I feel as if the efficiency of my creativity is better on a computer than it is with a brush or a pencil, even though I feel as if I'm confident and comfortable with the brush and the pencil. It's just the two outputs are so different, it's really hard to compare them. So the things I do digitally are more like I said, tools or stencils or stamps. Like I make things that I use in the making of the physical art. Or I'll try to design things jewelry-wise that are things I've never seen before, but I would like to wear.
Okay.
So I've designed earrings, I've designed pendants, I've designed like kinetic rings and stuff that fit around the joints of your fingers. And right now I'm working on a teardrop-shaped pendant that is articulated in 4 different points. So it's got 3 points in the actual general teardrop shape. And then in the round end of the teardrop shape, there's a disc there that spins on its own axis.
Could you ever see a point to where what you're doing now on the side would be your full-time gig? Oh,
I definitely want to be a full-time creative. It's just, how do I want to justify that? Technically, I'm a full-time creative right now, being an employed person, but it's not the creative I want to put out in the world, so it's a bit of a friction.
Okay.
I would very much like to operate a multi-use space that is a gallery, music listening spot, poetry slam, comedy, that kind of just generally open, expressive space as a dedicated physical entity in society that creates a vacuum for these types of expression. I don't know how fast I can make that happen, but honestly, that is where I feel like my efforts are going socially outside of my own creativity.
I will tell you, because I know a few people who own studios, if there was a studio element to that, you could fill that studio in breakneck speed.
Oh, definitely. And I know that's technically going to be part of my business model for whatever this ends up being. And I also want it to be a space where a dedicated space where I can record as well.
Right.
Because it's just nice to have a separate space from everything else, and an isolated space to do the thing that's dedicated.
Yeah. There were points where I would ask people to record out in public a lot more. But then it just hit a point. I was like, if you feel comfortable coming here, I hate to say this to break it down to sexes, but it's any women. I'm like, if you want to meet somewhere in public, I am totally fine.
Well, I give everybody the option because
right.
Sometimes I have access to a professional studio. Not all the time. It's not very frequent.
Yeah.
But I've done a few episodes there, and I like the people, and they like me. Whatever. Maybe we'll do some more stuff. But you know, I always be up front with the people. Like, look, I don't have a professional studio space, but my house is set up to record really well. You're more than welcome to come here, but if you would like an alternative neutral location, please suggest one, and I'll do my best to accommodate. I recorded one podcast with Garrett Derland, who's a local ceramic 3D printer whiz. He's a really cool dude. But at the Casual Pint, Hardin Valley, we set up in the corner, and we talked for about an hour and 10 minutes or so, something like that, and had a lady ask us what we were doing, if we were performing. And I said, no, man, we're recording a podcast over here talking about whatnots. And she's like, oh, that's so cool, and then just skittered about.
I have recorded probably a dozen episodes at Wild Love Bakehouse.
You know what? I've been there once, and I looked around, and I was like, man, I like the noise of this place.
I've done it outside, never inside.
So, this is the clink of the ice in my glass. I'm saying I'm saying that for this reason right here.
Yeah.
I like background noise to some degree because I like my recordings to have a sense of place.
Yeah.
I don't really enjoy a totally neutered, acoustically perfect environment because then it's just the two sources of noise, and not the noise and the environment. So I like listening to where people are on top of what they're doing. I don't mind if a car passes by outside the house and it's loud and it gets on the thing. I don't mind if...
So I think the only complaint I've ever had on the podcast is when I record at Wild Love, that there were trucks that were passing by.
Yeah.
And I was like, but we were still talking to where you could hear us.
But nobody wants to hear the truck.
I'll tell you another good place is Lakeshore Park. I've recorded a bunch
I believe
of
that, yeah.
episodes there. I think for me, it's just like, man, it's just so easy to...
Well, it's definitely more comfortable, and it leads to, I think, just as good of conversations. I don't feel as if the locale or the time of day has too much to do with it, as long as both people are willing to do the thing.
The one I will put an asterisk on that is the person who did my theme song is Adeem the artist,
the
musician, who's kind of blowing up right now.
He is kind of blowing up, right
and
now.
They texted me and were like, "Am I ever going to be on your podcast?" It's like, yeah. I was like, yeah, but in the back of my head, I've always thought, man, it'd be a great live episode. To do it out in public, but I was also like, but I also know from listening to Marin and stuff talk, they always say, oh, but when you do it live, you're playing to the audience and you're kind of elevated.
I don't give a shit.
Yeah,
I want to do a live episode so bad.
So Adeem and I are doing one next Monday here, but there's still part of me. It's like, man, I would still love to do, even if it's just in a space with like 10 of our friends.
So I've pitched it to Bijou that they should have some sort of program like this, like bi-weekly. So I've never got the email back, but you know.
So I'm trying to talk the Bijou into letting me curate screening films there.
That would be amazing. Because
I know the people at the Bijou, and I used to screen films at the Central Collective.
Okay.
And I did that for years. And I have a page where there for a long time during the pandemic, I started doing a film recommendation every week. And here, once it got to around last November, I just paused any extraneous stuff that I was doing, except for this podcast. It was like, I'm done. I need rest. I'm traveling. I need the holidays. I'm taking time.
I didn't
my
publish.
damn self.
I didn't publish anything in January. I don't think. I published something on New Year's because I had one more episode, and then I think I took all of January off.
See, this thing I heard Marin use the comment, "I've never missed a Monday," and I do this every 2 weeks, and I have never. So I've got a secondary podcast. It's a movie podcast that I've recorded 25 episodes of. That it will be weekly. That may be the one that kills me.
Yeah. Well, right now, the way my life is scheduled out and the amount of free time I do and don't have, a bi-weekly really works for my life right now. And I wouldn't mind to do more, but I feel like this is the happy medium as far as creating quality content and not being burnt out on it.
I think it's, for me, it's finding people that I find interesting.
Well,
I will, not to be a dick, but I have had a lot of people pitch to me that was like, I have zero interest in interviewing them.
Right.
Because I don't think their story is authentic.
Well, a lot of, I might be in a little different spot than that, but
because yours is focused. Mine is
well,
more.
no, I mean, it meanders quite a lot.
No, I mean, yours is art, so if it's an artist.
It is
mine,
generally
like,
creativity centric.
Yeah.
But the people that have approached me to be about it have
Well,
generally been pretty cool.
I approached. No,
Well,
Esther did. Esther did.
Yeah, she told me and I followed through. So it's all good. But, I've had, I won't say I've had a ton of people reach out to me because I haven't, but the people that have reached out to me have been really cool. And I felt just particularly privileged to talk to them. But, I feel, to be completely honest, I feel privileged to sit down and talk to just about everybody.
Yeah.
Because it's really nice to meet someone in the middle with time, energy, and the desire to sit down and do a thing for 45 minutes to 3 hours to whatever it may be, and be intentional about it and enjoy having a conversation.
Yeah.
And I will say that I've met people that I would like to consider a friend, and it has enriched my life to produce this bit of media, and I can't lie about it.
I 100% agree with that.
Yeah.
And the weirdest thing is asking some people to be on, because also during the pandemic, I had a weekly radio show to where I would interview somebody about music, and it was called Porch Sitting. So we picked
Yes.
porch sitting music, but we would, in the middle of it, I would interview people. It's like, what was the first album you bought? Like, what was the first song that made you stand up? All that stuff. And then, but I can't tell you how many people will be like, oh no, I can't do it. Or even one of my friends, Jesse, will get a shout out here, Jesse Balin. She's like, I need to get drunk before I do this. And I was like, you talk to me, every single one.
Yeah, we talk all the time.
Anyone who's come back at that, I was like, you and I will sit and talk for 4 hours and bullshit, and you're fine with it.
And you can't do that? Like
You can't do that. It's like, it blows my mind. It's like, I was like, I am an idiot. I know I'm an idiot, and I am comfortable getting on the mic.
Yeah, and so this is part of me growing up, too. My parents were both terribly social people for some reason or another.
Okay.
And had a catering business for a lot of the time when I was growing up. So public events, private parties, reunions, whatever. I was forced to be some degree of social. And I can't say it was too bad for me, but, talking to people has never been a weird thing for me to do. It becomes uncomfortable because socializing is weird sometimes. Oh. But the act of like talking to someone just in general has never been a pain.
This is not a humble brag. I was like, I feel like I can talk to a wall, and I will be out.
I can.
I will be out in public with like a friend. Like I was just in Atlanta, and all of a sudden I'll just start talking to somebody next to me, and at the end they'll be like, "What the hell was that?"
Or I'll be up here, like off and over to the right, just slightly above everything else going on right now, and just be like, blah, 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 blah. And then somebody's like pushes me or like taps me on the shoulder. What the hell are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like, come on, we're over here now.
So one of the early episodes of this, which ended up just me talking at one of my friends, but it was, I told, he and I smoke cigars, and we joke that we were trying to be the non-douchey cigar smokers. Because for us with cigars, I was like, it's literally about community and center, and it's also being intentional with your time to where you're not thinking about work,
right?
You're not
like
thinking about stress.
That's a social ritual for relaxation and communion.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we always joke we're the non-douchey cigar smokers. Like we're just sitting there smoking, not bothering anybody, leaving everybody alone. But I told him, I was like, man, there is a weird thing with dudes, with guys, that if you're in a bar or if you're in a cigar shop, you will strike up good friends. Pun unintended.
Well,
and we had an episode about that because I just done this. I'm trying to get to every baseball stadium, and I just done this road trip where I went to Cleveland, back home, to Detroit, to Chicago, and here. And I made friends like in every single
you found
city.
some cool people everywhere you went. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sitting there. I went to see the Tigers play, and then I went to a cigar bar after that was just down the road. And I'm sitting there. I walk in, and the bartender, as I'm walking up, goes, "What are you doing here?" And I was like, "Huh?
What?"
And she's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought you were my boyfriend." And I was like, "Well, I could be." And she just laughed, and she was like,
Not with an answer like that.
As I got closer, she was like, "Oh wait, you're taller than him." So I have a card that says, "Yes, I am tall," and has my height and everything on it.
The weather up here is fine.
It does.
Yeah.
In high school, I did play basketball, football. A giraffe in school plays. Like,
Oh, nice. Nice.
And I have given out, because I've been asked so much, I've given out 500, 600 of those cards.
I've thought about that several times, but I feel like there's a line at which I haven't yet crossed where that is funny, because 6'4", when you're tall, 6'4", to tall people, 6'4" is not that tall. But as a general person, it's pretty damn tall. Yeah. So I'm in this weird gray area as this size human being. And I'm perfectly okay with it. It's just like, I don't think I can hand that out and be serious.
My favorite thing is I love handing it out and just walking away.
Oh, of course.
Of course. Zero contact information. People don't know what the hell's going on. But she was like, "Oh, you're a little bit taller," and so I gave her the card.
Now that you mention it,
yeah, she was laughing her ass off. She's like, "I have to send this to him." Every time I got up to get a new drink, she said, "Every time you do that," she's like, "Here's how much you look like my boyfriend." When you were in the other side getting cigars, the two girls that were working in there called me and said,
"Hey, is your boyfriend over here?"
It's like, "We think your boyfriend's over here." But I say all that to say, I went and sat in the front, and there's an older dude sitting next to me, falling asleep, smoking a cigar. And there's a TV in front of us, and they're showing highlights, baseball highlights. And the game that I was at is Tigers, Yankees, that they almost couldn't finish because they kept having so many bench-clearing brawls. And so he finally wakes up and looks at it, and he was like, "That was a hell of a thing." I was like, "Yeah, it was. I was there." He's like, "Oh, you were there?" We then talked for an hour, like about baseball, about everything.
Yeah.
And it's this older black man and me in this Detroit cigar bar. And I was like, "This is amazing." Like,
last time I had some shenanigans like that happen, I'd sat down, I think in Myrtle's, and ordered an old fashioned. Yeah. And the guy looks over at me. He didn't say anything for a minute, and the bartender walks off rather frantically, looking for her tray full of bitters. And he just sort of looks over at me and was like, "Old fashioned, huh?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's kind of my bar, my go-to. If they can't make an old-fashioned, I'm probably going to order a draft beer."
Yeah.
And he was just like, "You know what? It's funny you say that, because that's kind of my logic about it, too." So I sat there and talked to this random stranger for the next 20 minutes about drinks that I liked and restaurant experiences that I had. And he, paid his tab and went on. And, good evening, sir. Yeah.
That's it. I love it.
Oh, those kind of social interactions, I enjoy them very much.
Yeah. I will tell you, there for a while, I was really big on Jack Honey and ginger ale.
You know what? That's not bad, especially if it's a really spicy ginger ale.
And because it's that good sweet, and it's just like, oh my God.
A Jack Honey in like lemonade or something with a good citric bite is,
I'm looking back at my phone to make sure my neighbor is not texting, being like, "Nope.
Who is this random stranger? Why do they park in front of my house after you've already told them that
I
parked in front of their house?"
Got a stupid work thread that I see I'm 15 texts behind. Okay. Is there anything you would like to see more of in art?
Oh boy, more, just in general.
Okay.
Always more. Well, let's talk specifically in the context of Knoxville, since we're here and that's where we both live.
Yeah.
Knoxville, as an artist, Knoxville is a pretty friendly place to be, but I'm really saddened by the lack of public spaces to go paint. Now, people get really uppity about vandalism, but the flip side of that is having some municipal places to go paint walls.
Yeah.
Now let's talk theoretically here for a second. Now, if there was a 8-foot by 32-foot wall set up at Victor Ash made out of cinder blocks, or any of the city parks where they've got all kinds of room to do these things, this would just be a free space. Nothing super graphic or controversial. Just, if it's presentable in public, please come paint it here. That keeps everybody.
Yeah.
Does not keep everybody, but gives most people a safe place to express themselves, so they don't feel the need to just paint some random wall and piss off some old people. I am very much an advocate for public art and spaces to create public art. Knoxville does a really good job funding art projects for the most part, but it's done some really silly things, like putting a giant mural in an alleyway.
Yeah.
So that piece is a glorious piece of art, and it deserves a much better home than in that alley.
Wait, which side?
It's the Union side, the left. If you're facing with Oliver on your left, it's the one behind Soccer Taco and all that jazz. That's a beautiful piece of art, and
So
they stuck it in an
I
alley.
had him on my podcast.
That's-
The guy who did that.
Yeah.
And it was interesting hearing him talk about it. He said no Knoxville artists applied to paint that wall, which still blows my mind.
Well, then I think they should have left it alone then. But that's not to slight him or the piece of art. The art is gorgeous. I just don't understand why they opened it up because he was the only one to play. Whatever, I'm getting stuck on that.
Yeah.
The opposite alley is a gorgeous thing because all the art is small enough to just kind of look at from the distance of the alley is wide. That piece is not. It's like 180 feet long. It's like 70 feet tall or whatever. It's a giant piece of art. And it's just, I think it's foolish and a disservice to that beautiful piece of art to put it in an alleyway that big where you can't stand far enough away to properly look at it. And that's the kind of silly decisions that the city has made a little bit here and there that just like boil my blood. Like you could spend all this money to hire this guy to come in here and do this, but you ain't going to make it where everybody can look at it. What the hell?
Yeah.
And he did a project that ended up on the side of Crafty Bastard that was kind of like a lead up tease thing, stylistic preview of that big piece, and it was all a bunch of faces and the style, and it looked great.
Yeah,
because you could stand far enough away to look at all of it.
Yeah.
So this kind of thing just blows my mind. As someone that likes to present art, I would never do that to an artist.
Yeah.
Ever. Like that just it baffles me.
Okay. That is.
But more public spaces in Knoxville would be great. But I do enjoy how friendly Knoxville is to creative people. So it's double-edged sword.
Yeah. I have hot takes, but I won't. I'll save them for when we record yours.
That's fine. That's fine.
Is there anyone you would like to work with?
Man, I like collaborating with all sorts of people. So I'm not going to sit here and be like, there's a list of 5 people I got to work with or else I consider myself a bum. But I enjoy people that I enthusiastically can be creative with. And if I stumble on folks that jive that way, then great. I definitely want to collaborate with people that enthusiastically enjoy my work and would like to collaborate with me. I don't have a list, nor do I care to prepare one because that is not... I don't want to single people out and be exclusionary by making a list.
Right.
Because who knows who's going to be somebody you collaborate with really well next. I try to be open about that, so I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, I'm against lists because lists are terrible.
Well, that's going to be my next question.
But I don't have a list of that.
Do you set goals or checklists?
Yeah, I do.
For yourself?
Yeah, so I challenge myself artistically in ways like I was talking about with the digital stuff. I've never made an articulated piece of jewelry before, so that's the articulated teardrop pendant was the challenge to make that thing functional the way I think I could make it functional. So that was a literal, tangible thing that I crafted from zeros and ones that needs to meet my expectations, and that is a goal. I've made static things, but this is a dynamic thing, and I want it to meet my expectations. Luckily, I have a pretty good base of understanding on how to make that happen.
And does it take a lot of trial and error to make that work?
It can. It really can. I understand the mechanical aspects of how these things need to interact with each other, but drawing them out and making sure the 3D aspect and then taking it from a digital thing to a tangible thing, depending on how you do that, can be difficult, or there hitches in the giddy up you got to work with or work around. It's difficult. But yeah, I do set goals. That's what we were asking. I do set goals, but specifically more with digital stuff. With physical art that I paint or draw, it's more like how accurately can I represent the picture in my head on this canvas or whatever it is. And there's varying degrees of success there always. But if I'm too displeased with it, I'll try it again. But goals otherwise for the podcast, I'd like to do a live show this year somehow. I really feel as if there's value in this style of conversation that perhaps the public isn't necessarily privy to in a public forum. And I would really like to host some sort of thing where people like ourselves can have these kind of intentional conversations and have a crowd of some size.
I'm not laughing at you. I'm just in my head putting buttons on what you're saying, which is
without it being the same 3 people over and over. I struggle with. I feel like the Knoxville art world can be a little gatekeepy, and
It definitely can, and
repetitive.
I've suffered that at
and
times.
it's just like, my big thing is kids. I want kids to be encouraged more.
Oh yeah,
Like it's what you're saying with the mural. I'm like, well, hell, I would want to go to like Norwood or Fulton and get those kids and say, your project this semester is to design a piece, and then you all will paint it together.
So
something like that.
A fella from Pittsburgh, Evan Lovett. I had him on Evan Lovett. I had him on the show. Sometimes people in our position just kind of pose questions to the universe, and then sometimes people say yes.
Yeah.
And this was one of those times where I sent a question out to the ether, and I got a positive response back. And he's an artist I've been following for a couple years. Does really nice murals and tattoos, observational style things. Incredibly talented human being, and he's sort of wrapped his creativity in some legal framework that really works out for him professionally, and is kind of an inspiration to me in some form or fashion with my mixed use space idea. But he runs a nonprofit creative sort of company that will do that, and he says, we'll figure out here, we'll go through a process with a group, and I'll teach you how to take the things you're thinking and turn them into pictures, and then orient all those things for they make a pleasing image.
Okay.
And then I will physically show you, teach you, guide you on painting the thing. And it's a wonderful program that he's put together, and he's done it all over the country, and it's great. And it delights me to see that process helping people be more or have more agency over their lives and how they interact with society.
Yeah.
That's very much something I would like for my art to do, is give me more agency with how I act in society.
Okay.
I would like to be a full-time creative and make a nice living selling the things I put on paper or in plastic or metal or whatever it may be.
Well, I feel like that may roll into the next question, which is, do you know what you'd like to do in the next 10 years?
Oh, 10 years. Good God. No.
Well, other than the creative space.
Well, I mean, so if you asked me not to paint, I would just kill over and die.
Yeah.
I have to, my brain would not stop, and being able, I can't not. At this point in my life, I know it's something that I have to do in ways, or else I just feel physical pain and hate just society at large and being alive. I would hope to be full-time creative, within this time period, and be self-employed as a creative, either providing space or services in some creative fashion. I just know that me fostering my creativity and helping others foster their creativity is something that makes me really happy. And if it paid my bills, that would also be great.
Okay. Is there any magazine you would like to see your work published, or museum that you would like to see your art exhibited?
You can be as bold as you want to be.
I would love to do Art Basel Miami.
Okay.
And here's why. If they can duct tape bananas to the wall, there were 3 of them. The highest selling one sold for $150,000. The other 2 sold for $130,000 a piece.
Yeah.
That person made a lot of money off of very little.
Yeah.
And they presented it as art. If you can say a gold-plated toilet is art and sell it, then good on you.
Oh.
I like what I genuinely enjoy making what I make. And if I could put it somewhere where that kind of money floats around, I could catch some of that money and be just fine.
I was going to say, I don't want a repeat of the Josh Shorey episode where I just yelled about Richard Prince and Cy Twombly for a good 30 minutes.
Well, I mean, and don't get me wrong, I'm not sitting here saying, my art is worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, or that I'm some revolutionary whatever. But, sometimes it really does matter how much you make by what eyes you catch on your piece. And I know a lot of money floats around down there. So that would be a very nice place to be. But I would like to be shown in places where weird things don't get shown.
Okay.
Because I like to think I make rather weird, psychedelic, fanciful things that don't garner a lot of mass appeal.
Okay.
Not because they're like abrasive or polarizing. It's just that
I don't know. You did make a sign that said cunt. I mean,
well, yeah, but the people that are buying that aren't the ones that are getting
I
pissed
know.
off about
I'm just
it.
kidding. I'm just kidding.
Valid points. Valid points.
Touche.
But honestly, that the creative process for that is the part that entertains me, and then the person that buys it is entertained by the fact that it exists.
Yeah.
I got all the enjoyment out of making the thing.
Yeah.
It's a cherry on top that somebody wanted to buy it and hang it on their wall. So I got mine out of this.
Good.
I did. I got mine. But I like seeing weird stuff. I like counterculture. I like just the generally uncool out there things that mass society doesn't really enjoy.
It's kind of a few years ago in Chattanooga. They did the Wayne-orama and the Wayne White exhibit at the Hunter, and it was great seeing Wayne White's the stuff he built to put up in the Hunter. Because I was like, some of his pieces, you know, where it's the painting with the. Do you know Wayne White?
I don't. I'm gonna have to check this out.
Holy crap! Okay, he's the guy who did Pee Wee's Playhouse.
Oh, okay. Then amazing. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And he does the ones where it's like looks like a landscape, and then it says something like "fucktastic" in the 3D letters.
Amazing.
Like that's Wayne White. But he built these big, like 3-story high structures in there. And I remember walking in that room and going, I love this, because this is not a painting on a wall.
Right.
Or I get really angry at some stuff in MoMA because it's like, this is also not a piece of rope that they painted blue that's hanging from the ceiling.
See,
I was like, this is something that like has some, it feels like this has a soul to it.
right. There's energy
Yes.
specifically given intent for that. And there's room in artistic creation for both of these things, but I will tell you which one of them entertains me more.
Oh, here, I got to tell you this quick story. So I'm in MoMA because this is one of the greatest moments of my life. And also there's an idea that I don't know if somebody gave me or if I came up with it on my own. If I had infinite money and time, I would want to interview security guards at art museums.
Oh, God.
Because I think security guards at art museums, any one of them that I've met or talked to, are not art people. And a lot of the people that work there did not come from affluent backgrounds.
True.
And so I'm in MoMA. I turn a corner and I look at a piece. And I apparently made a face. But in my periphery, I saw an elderly black woman, security guard, lean forward and have to put her hands on her knees because she was laughing.
So she was laughing at your face.
Yes. And she came over and she put her hand on my shoulder and she's like, honey, if you could have seen your, like, I can't remember exactly what she said. She was like, if you could have seen your face, it was just, you looked, something like you looked disgusting.
Right.
And I was like, ma'am, I've been doing art for 20-something years. I don't know what the hell this is. And she could not stop laughing. And I was just like, I brought that lady joy that day.
Yeah, you definitely did. And that's amazing.
I love it. And I can't think I remember the piece. I think it was a piece. There's a plain white canvas. And like that TV, it had a blue stripe that was 1/2 inch wide on top, a red stripe down one side that was 1/2 inch wide, a yellow and a green or some bullshit like that. And that was the entire piece. And I was just like, I want to rip this off the wall and burn it to the
There
ground.
better be a really nice train of thought behind that, because visually it is unappealing to me.
So this is what Josh and I got into about, and my friend Michelle and Kim and I have gotten into, because I have worked in marketing and PR. I was like, that's marketing and PR bullshit. That is critics deciding something should be of value, even though it may not be of value.
So that's that gatekeeping bullshit.
Yes. That's where I get angry.
Well, also the whole buy-sell pricing market of art of that caliber is a really shady place to be.
Oh,
So that's just from my limited experience selling art, that seems to be the dark money pools equivalent of the stock market.
So it's the whole Banksy thing, however you feel about Banksy, but he did that piece that the minute it sold, it shredded.
I loved it.
And it stopped halfway through, and they said that made it more valuable. And he was not happy about it. He was like, damn it.
Well, he's trying to piss people off, which is a wonderful aim of any artist.
Yeah.
But, you know, that's performance art at that point, and the people are just like, oh, God.
Yeah.
You know, and I think he could have got the reaction he wanted in different ways.
Yeah.
He should have set it on fire.
Okay, we'll end with this question for mine. Then we'll switch. So everybody listening at home, you'll get to listen to two different ones. You'll get two for one. If you could talk to the 14-year-old version of yourself, what would you tell her?
Oh man, I
And I can't take credit for that question. There's a great podcast called The Honeydew with Ryan Sickler, and he asked that question of every first-time guest. I was like, but he says like 17. I was like, no, 14. 14 is freshman year in high school. That's a totally different ball.
So I'm gonna think about where I was real quick for a second, just to round out a little bit of my life story here. I was playing baseball, and I didn't really have a whole lot. Like I was just starting to like seriously draw things that really pissed off old people, and I was talking like I grew up okay. So 14-year-old Thomas running around in the highest church per capita community in the entire continent.
I can't imagine.
Yeah. No, statistically, the highest church per capita in the country.
That stat does not surprise me.
It is indeed truth. So I started drawing a lot of like really dark shit, skulls with horns and upside down crosses, and all the stereotypical thing a teenager draws.
Yeah.
In a religious context. And it's not that they were getting shown to people, and I was literally pissing people off, but I guess I kind of got off on knowing that it was taboo.
Okay.
And that made me enjoy it just a little bit more.
Okay.
But I would probably tell myself if I'm going to take art seriously, I should start a little sooner than I did, which was like early 20s.
Okay.
And just practice. Draw things just to be drawing instead of drawing things would piss people off, which essentially is practice anyway, but it's not practice for practice sake.
Right.
It's more spiteful and malicious, but it was still practice.
It's drawing with a smirk.
Yeah, and I drew this crackhead looking ass pencil one time, and I think I was a sophomore in high school. We had a substitute teacher, and she was really conservative. Excellent substitute teacher, but she did not care for what I was doodling in my notebook. And I drew this pencil. It was obviously going through withdrawals, and part of its eraser was cracked. And it was just like a really cartoony pencil with like one arm, arms and leg, or one line, arms and legs.
Yeah.
And it's like scratching its neck and like reaching out for it. Hey kid, you got any more of those erasers? And she was just like, oh no. And then confiscated my notebook for that class. And I was just like, you know what? Screw some of these old people. This is inconvenient. Pissing this old lady off did not help me one bit. So looking back on that little shenanigan right there, I would say, practice for the sake of practice, not out of spite or malicious, just to be doing some screwy shit, piss people off. But I still have a lot of those drawings. Some of them are really cool. Some of them that are less, esoteric are really fun. Like I drew a lot of skulls and flames and cars in high school. Some stereotypical dude shit, I guess.
Yeah.
But I can see how that arena of influence is still an arena of influence I have. But definitely practice for practice sake.
Yeah.
If I'd known how much it would help me as an adult, I would have started then.
Okay. It's a good place to end on. Thank you for being on.
Oh, thank you.